Welcome to this week's edition of Bowl Season Stories. I'm Nick Carparelli, the Executive Director of Bowl Season. And each week, different guests from the world of college football join me to talk about current topics in the sport, as well as discuss what they remember most about their bowl game experiences. Today, we are joined by national college football and basketball writer for Yahoo Sports and fellow Syracuse alum, Pete Thamel, former Iowa State and Auburn head football coach Gene Chizik, and the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Executive Director, Rick Baker. Today's show is brought to you by TaxAct, the official tax filing software of Bowl Season. Also joining me, as she does each week, is our on-air producer, Angela Lang. Angela, I'm here in Houston. I was at the Texas Bowl last night, the last bowl game prior to the College Football Championship game in Indianapolis. What a bowl season we've had so far. I can't wait to talk to today's guests about it.
So much excitement. I know you've been crisscrossing the country, and it's probably hard for you to pick a favorite. It's like picking a favorite child. But do you have a favorite experience so far of your travels of bowl season?
Gosh, it's hard. It is hard to pick one. You know, you look at the ones I've been to as well as the ones I've watched on TV. I just think overall the compelling matchups and the upsets and the reaction of the student athletes, you know, after they win these games has been fun for me. If I had to pick one moment, I think it's that Utah walk-on quarterback coming in and taking advantage of his moment, even though they didn't win the game. I was nervous for him, but it was really fun to watch him perform.
Yeah, so many goosebump moments that really show these games are meaningful here at the end of the season. And Pete Thamel, award-winning writer covering college football for Yahoo Sports, joins us, and excited to hear what Pete has to say about bowl season. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Angela, Nick, thanks for having me. It's been a fun flurry of games here.
So Pete, you and I have known each other for a while now. I was thinking about it last night. I think it was 20 years ago, back when I started at the Big East. You were at the New York Times still then. We've gotten to know each other pretty well over the years. You're so knowledgeable about college football and basketball, so it's always great to get your perspective on what's going on in these sports. But as you know, this podcast is called Bowl Season Stories for a reason. So we're gonna talk about bowl games a little bit and get your perspective on this season as well as the bowl system in general. Tell us about when you were a kid. You know, you grew up in an area where there weren't a lot of options to go see bowl games in person back then, but obviously you were aware of them. You know, what was your first experience with bowl games growing up? Did you watch them on TV? Did you feel any sense of emotion about them when you were young that you can think of?
So, I mean, I certainly did watch them on television. Growing up in Massachusetts, you're kind of agnostic to to college programs. I remember probably the '88 Notre Dame team sort of being one of the first teams that maybe captured my attention. I do have vague memories of Doug Flutie's pass to beat Miami in the early '80s when I was very young. That was obviously not in a bowl game. That was in a regular season game against Miami. But those were some of the kind of earlier college football moments that lured me in. And then once I got to college at Syracuse, I was lucky enough to cover a Fiesta Bowl when Coach Pasqualoni led Syracuse against Kansas State. They played in an Orange Bowl as well. Got thumped pretty good by Florida, and so that was the first time I was really able to sort of see the pageantry and really experience the bowls.
Yeah, I'm not so sure today's generation knows our Syracuse Orange to ever have been good enough to play in Fiesta Bowls and Orange Bowls. I know we're both looking forward to them getting back to bowl season sometime soon. Well, talk more about, you know, professionally. You mentioned those two early on. You know, what are some of the moments you had that you remember covering bowl games or attending them, you know, during your career?
Well, I mean, the one that really stands out is that great Fiesta Bowl between Boise State and Oklahoma. I think that would have been the '06 season, if memory serves me right. Jared Zabransky was the Boise quarterback. Adrian Peterson was obviously the star tailback for Oklahoma, and that game basically, you know, I think is the greatest game I've ever covered. It had the consecutive trick plays of the hook and ladder at the end of regulation, I think it was a receiver pass in the end zone in the first overtime, and then the obviously the famous Statue of Liberty play to end the game. Just in terms of like sheer excitement, it's hard to top that flurry. And at the time, Boise beating Oklahoma was just a huge deal, because it had been, there had been that struggle for access. Or Urban Meyer's Utah team in 2004 was sort of the first to sort of break through that barrier. And so there was obviously just that was one of the few times where I've like stood up in a press box and like emoted, screamed. I mean, it was just an unbelievable finish. And if people forget, in Oklahoma's overtime, Adrian Peterson took one carry for 25 yards for a touchdown. So there were some big time players on that field, and there was just and Boise was up multiple touchdowns in that game. Oklahoma came all the way back. It was just from wire to wire a really memorable game, and one of the best I've ever covered in my career.
Yeah, I think we all remember that game. That's a good one. Well, we just finished up this week with the Texas Bowl, the last bowl game before the CFP Championship game on Monday, as we mentioned earlier. What are your thoughts on this year's bowl season? Anything particular stand out to you?
Yeah, I think it's been a really good bowl season. I think so far the highlight has to be that Rose Bowl. I mean, it was just such a remarkable game, and it certainly bore out in the ratings. And just to see Jackson Smith-Njigba have the afternoon he had, I'm sure you felt old, Nick, seeing Marvin Harrison Jr. Score 3 touchdowns and play the way he did, and ushering in the next great generation of Harrison's receiving. To me, that was that's sort of been the hallmark moment so far. Oklahoma State had what Mike Gundy called the greatest win in program history. They had an awesome comeback against Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. And you go through, I think probably the most fun bowl outside the Rose Bowl was that Music City Bowl. Purdue and Tennessee trading missed tackles for most of the afternoon, but still a very fun game. And that's kind of what the bowl is about. I think wide open offenses, wild finishes. That one really stuck out. And I think, part of what we'll remember this bowl season is like what Rutgers did. Sort of just, their punter flew back from Australia to play in the Gator Bowl, just sort of figuring out as we've gone along. And that's sort of what sports have become a little bit the past 2 years, is finding a way to play and finding a way to get together. And Rutgers obviously got beat pretty solidly against Wake Forest, but showed up for a half, and it was a nice moment for that program. But I think that's a little bit of the spirit of this bowl season. We saw LSU try to figure it out, running Wildcat last night. In the Texas Bowl where you were. So there's been some great games.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Marvin Harrison Jr. You mentioned your first bowl experiences covering the Fiesta in the Orange at Syracuse. I was there just a little bit before you when I was working there for Coach Pasqualoni. The first time we went to the Fiesta Bowl, and Marvin Harrison was a receiver on that team. And I know Marvin pretty well. And I don't know, I guess I knew his son was at Ohio State. I wasn't really tracking on it until I watched the game. And I said, well, I feel old now. But I think he has a chance to be as good as his dad, I think, which is pretty damn
He's
good.
6'3", 205. Man.
Yeah, he's big.
Like Marvin. Yeah, Marvin Harrison is obviously one of the best receivers in NFL history, but he was never just a physical specimen. So his son is really some elite traits to go along with what we're starting to see as some of those technical abilities that his dad had.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So let's dive into, the bowl system a little bit. I'd like to do this with you. I mean, typically this podcast, it's very, very easy questions and answers, and not to say that this one is any harder, but I'm always fascinated this time of year with the commentary around college football. It's like Groundhog Day. It's the same kind of commentary every year at this time. By all indications, college football is as popular as ever. Television viewership in the regular season was off the chart this year. I think we had 15 games with 7 million or more viewers, which is amazing. Bowl season viewership was up. We had compelling matchups, overtime games, a lot of scoring. It was a fun bowl season. But at the same time, people are wanting to focus on the negatives. The opt-outs, the transfer portal. Obviously, COVID's affecting, everything we do in life. Pete, where is the balance between all that's good and popular in college football and the great experiences that bowl season provides to these student athletes, especially the seniors who may never play another game, with the negatives that people want to intend to focus on at this time of year?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is a balance. Like, I've never been one who thinks there's too many bowls. I think that bowls are a great experience for players, and as a consumer, I like having a lot of bowls. So I think that argument has kind of become a little bit stale and antiquated. And what I think's happening in real time, Nick, is that the business model of the bowls has been a booming business model, and the players are simply catching up to it, and they're looking after their own business interests. And they don't need to participate in the Bulls business model if they don't want to, which is fine. Like, I obviously have no problem with anybody opting out. Respect anybody who still plays, but have no issue there. But I think the players are now businesses, and they were probably before, but they are now, and they're looking out for their own respective business interests. And if they feel like this expanded bowl season doesn't fit their business interests, they're making their own choices, which is great. Right? Like, it's America. You should be able to do what you want, go where you want. I think the bowl business model needs to catch up to some of the realities and evolve. And I think we're on the cusp of an evolution. We've been pushing there for 6 months. There's been some obstacles on an expanded playoff. I do think we're going to get there. Now, is it in 24? Is it in 26? I'm not sure, but I think it's fairly inevitable. And so we're sort of in this little period of flux right now, and where you do end up having a game like the Peach Bowl, where the guys you'd want to tune in and watch aren't playing. Now, the game was fine, but there are going to be circumstances where, if that was a playoff game, I think it would have been completely different, and Kenneth Walker would have played and Kenny Pickett would have played, and that will kind of resonate as one of the examples going forward here. So I don't think the bowl business model is broken. I just think the players have evolved, and the bowl business model and the leadership in college athletics need to evolve.
Yeah, I agree with you, Pete. I think college athletics in general needs to continue to evolve. The issues that bowl season faces are not unique to bowl season. They're system wide. They're consistent across all of college athletics, and it's an interesting time in college athletics for sure. And I know the bowl season's ready to evolve with it, and remain a really important part of college football, as it has been for a long time. Last question for you, Pete. Big game coming up on Monday, rematch of the SEC championship game. Any predictions for the CFP championship game on Monday?
Yeah, I'm going to take Georgia in this game. It was interesting. The odds makers, after Georgia got thumped pretty good on a neutral field, came right back and placed them as the favorite. I got a story coming out on Yahoo this week where I have coaches break down the title game, and one of them said something to me that kind of stuck in my head. He said Alabama has the three best players. Obviously, the edge rusher Will Anderson, Bryce Young, and then Jamison Williams, the receiver. He said those are the three best players in the field. 4-11. That's mostly Georgia. So Georgia maybe has a quantity of high-end talent, where Alabama has just a few elite players that have pushed over the top. I thought that Georgia did a poor job of pressuring, confusing, and altering what Bryce Young did in that first game. And I think they have enough talent, enough pieces, and Dan Lanning will adjust the scheme enough to make things more difficult for him. I mean, when you think back at that game, it gets swung on two plays. There's a coverage bust over the middle where Jamison Williams cuts across and ends up outrunning the defense for a touchdown. And then there's the over-the-top pass early in the second half to Jamison Williams. I feel like if they can, again, it's easy to say, right, eliminate big plays, but I do feel like they can tighten things up enough and create enough havoc and confusion with all the talent they have on defense to slow down. But I think, Nick, it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a close game. I think that, it wouldn't surprise me into overtime. If it's not a one-score game, I would be pretty surprised. I think I'm going to give Georgia the edge. I feel like Stetson Bennett has, he's gone through it a little bit, and I think he's going to come out the other side here and play an inspired game against the Tide.
Pete, that is a level of game analysis that we are not used to here on Bowl Season Stories podcast.
Okay.
So we appreciate that. That was awesome, and gives us a lot of things to look at when we watch the game. Pete, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate your time. Always good talking to you, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, Nick, thanks. Angela, thanks. Appreciate you.
We're going to take a short break and be right back with former Iowa State and Auburn head football coach Gene Chizik. Stay with us.
After bowl season comes tax season, and this year you too can feel like a winner with a guaranteed max refund from TaxAct, the official tax filing software of bowl season. Go to taxact.com to get started today and for details and disclosures on the maximum refund guarantee.
Welcome back to Bowl Season Stories. We are now joined by former Iowa State and former Auburn head coach Gene Chizik. Coach, it's an honor to have you on the show. And as we're getting ready to wrap up bowl season, you certainly had a successful stretch in bowl season games.
Yeah, bowl season is amazing, guys. I mean, it's it's an honor to play in the bowl games, number one, and from a player's perspective, it's an incredible reward, for having a good season. And look, bowl season is exciting for everybody. I think the fans are. They love to be able to tune in for about a straight month of nothing but football to kind of culminate the season of their favorite team. But bowl season was special for me. I was lucky. I actually was able to be a part of a lot of good bowl teams and won a lot of games in bowls. So it's always been a great memory for me.
Coach, this is Nick Carparelli here. Thanks again for joining us. I'm actually sitting here in Houston. I was at the Texas Bowl last night, which, as you know, was the last game of bowl season before the championship game on Monday. It seems to me that this bowl season was a little bit more exciting than others. I mean, we just saw some upsets, some high scoring games. It was just a lot of fun. I'm sure you watched a lot of them. What's your view of this year's bowl season and anything in particular stand out to you?
Well, bowl season was amazing. I mean, of course, me being so involved with the SEC, I think we had 13 teams that were involved in bowl games. So obviously I paid a lot of attention to those games, but from a national perspective, watched a lot of those bowls too. But I agree. Bowl season has been extremely exciting. I would probably do it injustice if I started naming the games that were the best games, but there were some great ones out there. As I look back and I reflect on these, people always have this sentiment, is there too many bowl games? Is there some, some of the luster, is that kind of worn off? Well, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm a football junkie. And I love the fact that there's this many bowl games. I think it's fantastic rewards for players. I think it's fantastic for the fans over the holidays to be able to sit down with family and friends and watch bowl games on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night or a Wednesday afternoon. College football is an escape. And when you have that many cool games and these cool matchups that aren't, interconference matchups, I think it's really neat. So the bowl season has been amazing. Not over yet because we still got the big one to come, but I think it's been an amazing bowl season.
I agree with you, Coach. And obviously it's my job to say these things, but I really believe them. I'm passionate about the sport and about bowl season in general. And you just look at the reaction of the players after these games, and it could be any type of team in any type of bowl. I watched the Coastal Carolina players and the way they react after that bowl win. You think about a program like UAB, beating the highest ranked opponent they've ever beaten, in the Independence Bowl, and how excited they were. And then, I was at the Citrus Bowl in Kentucky's victory over Iowa. I mean, those kids were so excited to win their fourth straight bowl game. It's really, really meaningful to those kids, despite what some of the media likes to say about them.
Well, I'm in the media, so I understand how this works, right?
You're a little different though, Coach. You're a little different than other media.
Well, I try to be very, I guess, pragmatic on how I see things, right? And I do see things from a coach's perspective. I do see things from a player's perspective. There's too much attention shed on the guys that decide not to play in these games. But what people don't realize is that the lion's share of these players, a high percentage of these players, whether they have incredible prospects as far as being an NFL guy down the road, they play in them. As a whole, they play in these games. But from a media perspective, we always want to focus on the ones that don't. but why don't we focus on the ones that do? Right. So we always say that in recruiting, you know, they talk about the ones you didn't get. Let's not talk about the ones we didn't get. Let's talk about the ones we did get. Right. So I see it kind of the same way. Bowls are celebrated by the majority of college football players, no matter what their prospects are for the NFL. And to your point, Purdue beating Tennessee, Coastal Carolina. I mean, Kentucky's reaction after beating Iowa. All you have to do is watch for 10 seconds at the end of the game and see that these kids had a blast. Like, they'll never forget these things, because no matter how you want to slice it, bowl games are bowl games, and they're a reward for playing well in a season in most cases. And so, man, I think, again, I love watching the players respond, and I can't get enough bowl games. I can't say it enough.
But you had the chance to go to a lot of bowl games as a coordinator and then as a head coach at a couple of different places. Obviously, you won the national title in 2011. You know, talk a little bit more about what that bowl experience is like as a head coach, and talk about how some of the bowl games can be building blocks for the future. You know, you won the national championship at Auburn, but the year before, you know, you took your team to the Outback Bowl, right? And some people could view that as kind of a part of the process. You know, the winning the national championship didn't start in August of that year. It started the year before. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I feel like most coaches would say that, you know, on a national championship run or what propelled them into a really great season, more cases than not, you probably look back at what happened in the bowl game, because that's the last thing, right? And that could have happened either way, good or bad, right? So in our case, we had, I think, a double overtime win in the Outback Bowl against Northwestern, which really set the tone for the offseason. I mean, it makes going into that weight room, it makes those 5:30 a.m. workouts, it makes them completely different in terms of mindset, right? And then there's some coaches that could probably look back, maybe it was a bad loss, and it was a chance for them to really recalibrate and refocus. And maybe that propelled them into, you know, the next season and maybe a really stellar year. So, but I know for us, that Outback Bowl game, as an example, really propelled us for an incredible offseason. And I think most coaches will tell you that's why it's so important to win that game, to win your last game in a bowl game atmosphere against a non-conference opponent. There's a lot of value in that, and there's a lot of stress put on that. So, and it's interesting because when you go to these bowl games as a coach, you have to find that happy medium where the players can have a lot of fun and get the reward they want, but you also know it's a work week because you understand the importance of what a win will do for you moving forward. So it's an interesting dynamic.
Coach, question I like to ask people. You know, our lives are professional careers or journeys, right? And when you were younger, I'm sure you had some mentors that helped you climb the ladder as a young coach. And talk to us about some of the most influential people in your career, and what was some of the best advice you got that you were able to apply as a coach?
Well, the best advice I ever got when I was a young coach was be authentic. Be authentically you. I think, and there's a lot of cases where a lot of young coaches get into the profession and they see how coach A, B, or C kind of conducts his business, and they try to emulate that, and they kind of get out of their own character. And the word that I always tell young coaches now is be authentic. You got to stand up in front of those 18 to 22-year-olds every day, and you got to be authentically you. That doesn't mean you can't use the X's and O's and the motivation tools that other people use, but in the end, they've got to be you. And that's the same way when you're a broadcaster on TV or do your job. You just have to be authentically you. Some will like it, some won't, but you have to be you. That was the best advice I ever got. But the people that had so much influence on my life from a coaching perspective would have to start with Danny Ford. Years ago, he gave me my first college job. I was actually a high school coach, And Danny Ford was the head coach at Clemson at the time, 30-something years ago. It was 1988. He gave me my first college job. So he had a lot of influence, and we were really good. We had won 20 games in 2 years, won an ACC championship. But he had a lot of influence. And then one guy that some people may not know, his name's Boots Donnelly. He was the head coach at Middle Tennessee State. And that was my first real full-time job where I wasn't a graduate assistant. It was my first job. And I happened to be part of the =1 defense in the country 2 years in a row. And the way Coach Donnelly taught, the way he ran the program, everything that he did, he's not going to be one of these names out there that everybody knows, but he had incredible influence on my career. And then I can fast forward, and how could I ever not say Mac Brown? Mac is like my big brother, I guess, if you will. Mac recruited me away from Auburn. I was the defensive coordinator at Auburn in 2004 when we were undefeated. And when Mac Brown made the call about coming to Texas, I was honored, very honored. But going and spending 2 years with him, being fortunate enough to be part of a national championship then when we played USC, that was an amazing part in my career, in my life. And he is probably one of the most influential, if not the most influential guy that I ever was around. Just the way he conducted himself, the way he treated people, the way he was with the players. He was a huge influence on me.
Big game on Monday, Coach. Rematch of the SEC championship game, Georgia and Alabama. You're obviously very familiar with both of those teams. Care to make any predictions?
Well, what I've found out over the years, guys, is I stink at predictions. I'm not really good at it, because I said in the first matchup in the SEC championship that there is no way, there is zero way, based on what I've seen, that Alabama could beat Georgia. I just didn't see it, and couldn't have been further from the truth. I think it's going to be very difficult for Alabama to beat Georgia twice. I still say Georgia's the most complete team in the country. I've said it all year, even after they lost to Alabama, I said it. When you watch the college football playoff semifinal against Michigan, I think you could make the argument that they are. And I still feel that way. So this is a tall order for Alabama to beat a team like Georgia twice. Georgia's they're amazing defensively. The loss to Alabama in the first game was a Georgia problem. They did a lot of things in that game that were very uncharacteristic in terms of mistakes and execution that I hadn't really seen all year. You never know why those things happen in those games, but they do. So I think it was a great wake-up call for Georgia. I think it was a scenario where Georgia is going to say, hey, look, we can't roll the ball out there and beat anybody. We got to be focused, and we got to execute. All those things that Kirby preaches. And so they're going to be very focused. So I think it's going to be tough for Alabama to beat them twice. But again, I'm terrible at predictions.
Well, that's why they play the games, Coach. I think we're all looking forward to watching that one on Monday night. Last question for you. This is something I've wanted to ask you for a while and haven't had the opportunity. You're very active on Twitter. I enjoy following you.
Oh, good.
But your content it might be a little bit different than someone of your background. The majority of your posts seem to be very philosophical in nature. I think they're meant to be motivational in nature. Tell me, what's your goal with what you post on social media? What inspires you to post what you do?
Yeah, that's a lot of people ask me that. I love being on Twitter because I want to give people things to think about. I want to try to give positive energy out there. Most of my tweets are really in something to do with you making yourself better as a human. I believe every day we get up, there's room for improvement. And so a lot of it is thought provoking. A lot of it is trying to be motivational. A lot of it is trying to be encouraging to people. And I can't tell you how many times I get people, when I have a conversation with them, they're like, man, I get up and read those every day. There's some days when it's just the perfect tweet. And I needed that because I wanted to be able to help people out. And to be quite frank, a lot of these are just the same things I've told players over 30 years. And people said, where did you start doing this? Well, when I actually stepped away from coaching, I went back through all my notes and all my slides and all my everything. And a friend of mine said, man, this is really good stuff. Why don't you start putting it out there? That's how it started. And so I started like 5 years ago and just started putting it out there because it's the stuff that I've used in my coaching career over the years. So just trying to help people, encourage people, and certainly make people think about things that may, help them in that one moment where they, are in a crisis or don't know what to do, or, just something to help people.
I think you're accomplishing that, Coach. I like I said, I enjoy them. I get a lot out of them. I have two sons. One's a freshman in college, one's a junior in high school, and I often share your posts with them. So you're making an impact on the Carparelli family for sure, if that means anything to you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for being on the show. We took enough of your time. Good luck with everything you do. Really appreciate your perspective and everything you're doing for college football. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, guys. Blessed and honored to be on. Thank you, guys.
So great to have Coach Chizik on the show. And now we welcome President and CEO of the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. Welcome, Rick Baker, who is just finishing the 86th Classic. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much. And before we get started today, I just really want to thank Nick Caparelli for all the great work that he does for the Football Bowl Association. It's really an honor to be on with him today. Wright Waters did a great job and built a great foundation for the Football Bowl Association. But when Nick came on board, we were certainly hopeful that he would take it to another level for us. And he's certainly done that. The bowls are, we all are caught in our traditions, and we're all obviously very much tied to our traditions. And I think with Nick's leadership, it's really helped us realize that we need to balance our traditions with innovation and flexibility, especially with COVID and all the things that have gone on. And I just really want to thank Nick on behalf of all of the executive directors of the Bowls for his great leadership here during these uncertain times.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for that. Very, very kind words. It's, as they say, it's easy to work hard and at least try to do a good job when you love what you're doing. I love college football. I'm passionate about the bowl system, and people ask me who my boss is. I have 44 bosses. You're one of them. But executive directors across the board, Rick, are really good guys. I think you have to be a good guy to work in this business, and you're probably at the top of that list. So thank you for that, Rick.
Thank you.
Now, you've been a part of the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic for 4 decades. I think you joined the organization in 1988 as the director of marketing. Did you ever think about that? Does it seem that long?
Oh my gosh. I used to be able to tell everyone a little bit of something about every game, but now they all run together. It's impossible to keep them apart. Really, the way that we do it on staff is we really look at those 34 or 5 years sort of in 3 buckets. One was the first 6 or 7 years we were still tied to the Southwest Conference, and we were proud to be the home of the Southwest Conference champion for those years. Then the Southwest Conference went out of business. We didn't get into the BCS. And then really for the next 19 to 20 years, we really spent a lot of time just trying to get back to where we were hosting relevant games again. I mean, we did everything possible to continue to, perform at the highest levels. And then finally, really the last 8 years, thank goodness, we've been part of the CFP and we got back to the highest levels again. So it's sort of been 3 buckets that we've gone through over those, 4 decades. My hair was certainly a different color when I started, but it's been a great run, just really a blast, and it's really been an honor to be part of this great profession.
Well, with your extensive experience, you're kind of known as the dean of bowl executive directors. You've seen a lot, you've done a lot. You mentioned the 4 decades. Also during that time, you've overseen national broadcast coverage changes and growth over the years. Of course, you saw the Cotton Bowl move to AT&T Stadium and solidify its place as a New Year's Six Bowl. What has that journey been like for you?
It's really been fulfilling, Nick. But I would tell you, as you sort of look through the rearview mirror, the thing that I will remember the most, without a doubt, is the people that I have had the pleasure of not only working with, but getting to know, and really the friendships that have been developed, whether that's with our staff or with our civic leadership or with our many volunteers that we have an opportunity to work with, all of our great partners, as you said, AT&T Stadium, the Dallas Cowboys, certainly Goodyear now. It's really an honor to really work with, really the best of the best. And these people, thank goodness, have really embraced what our true north is. Our true north is making memories. I mean, we're all about making memories, and that's for the teams, the universities, all the different people that we come into contact with. And thank goodness all of these people have really embraced that and really felt the same way that our staff and I do, that's really what we're trying to do. And it's really been a great run. It's gone fast, but it's really been a great run.
Talk about memories. I think that's what bowl season, is for a lot of people. It's about those memories, and we've heard a lot of great stories over the course of the 19 episodes we've had so far, bowl season stories. And that might be the answer to this next question, but the Cotton Bowl is known for its exceptional hospitality, and that's obviously a philosophy you've had around your game for a long time. Why is that so important?
Well, I'd like to take credit for it, Nick, but it certainly was there before I got here, and it really developed because of where we are with regards to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are not a destination city. We do not have the beaches that Eric has in Miami. We don't have the golf courses that Mike has in Phoenix. We don't have the French Quarter that Jeff has in New Orleans, and we certainly don't have the setting sun, like Kevin does in Pasadena. So we've really had to create what our identity is, and so what was there way before I got there was this Southern hospitality, creating, this atmosphere of personal service and customer service that we've really depended on to create, who we are. And, it's really been, something that I'm really proud of. I am thankful for the support that that we've had throughout all of these years. When you've got a great brand and you've got the financial resources and you've got a great staff, it's pretty hard to screw that up. And so we've really worked hard to create this image of that Southern hospitality, and I'm really proud of the way that we've done it.
Now, you mentioned your great staff. They make you and the entire organization look good. I know it's known to be a great place to work. In fact, having you on this show is a little bit of a coup because you're always trying to push your staff and put them in positions to further themselves personally and professionally. Want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about your staff and some of the key folks that make your event so great.
Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you. They are just terrific. I am so honored to be able to work with them every day. I'm proud of them. I've seen them grow right before my very eyes, professionally and personally. I don't want to start naming them because I know I'll forget someone, but I do just want to say that I've known for a long time that I'm not necessarily the smartest guy or the most talented guy, but I think if there's one thing that I'm pretty good at is making sure that I surround myself with people that are smarter than I am, that work harder than I do, that have great integrity, and I've really been very fortunate over the years to have that kind of staff. We've had staff that I've hired. We've had interns that have grown into full-time positions because we certainly saw the potential. It's like a football coach, and you get some folks from transfers and you recruit some folks, and we've really put an incredible team together. We've got savers and we've got spenders, so we balance out that way too. Thank goodness we're a nonprofit, because we certainly don't make much money here, because we pour it right back into our game, because that's really the way that our staff has always approached our philosophy and what we've done. So look, I certainly would not be where I am today without the incredible folks that I work with every day, and I am just so proud of their professional development, and I'm proud to call them friends. And they're the best of the best, and I wouldn't trade any of them.
I know most of your staff, Rick, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
One of the common threads across all the bowl games is their impact they have on their community. Proud members of the community that host the games, and obviously your game's no different. I know the Cotton Bowl Foundation has been something near and dear to your heart as you've been instrumental in its growth. What are some of the main efforts that it supports?
Yeah, Nick, our foundation is really only about 5 years old. As I said before, we've got savers and spenders, and the spenders have won the day for most of the year. So we haven't really had much money really after the game has been played to really do a whole lot. But since we've become part of the CFP and the success of the CFP, we have been able to put a little money aside to invest back in the community that has supported us for 86 years, as Angela mentioned at the beginning. So the foundation has been in existence for about 5 years. We've been able to impact our community for a little over $2 million. And really our focus is really disadvantaged youth. We feel very strongly that we can make an impact there. We have youth clinics. We certainly donate to a lot of worthy causes here that have a direct impact on creating a better experience for the young people that may not have the advantages that we all grew up with. And we're very proud of that. It's something that gives us good balance to realize how lucky we are to be in the profession we're in, and to be around the people that we are, and to be able to help people that certainly need it. So we're really proud of the foundation and what it's become, and we certainly think that it can even be bigger and better in the future.
Last question for you, Rick. I've taken up a lot of your time. You just had the playoff semifinal last week between Cincinnati and Alabama.
Yeah.
How much more do you and your staff have to prepare, or how do you prepare differently when it's a semifinal game versus the years in between when it's a Cotton Bowl game?
Yeah. It's a great question, Nick. In a lot of ways, we don't prepare any differently. We really do very similar things, whether we have a semi or whether it's a regular Goodyear Cotton Bowl year. The one thing that I would say is we are all the staff, our board, our partners are very much aware of the fact that the spotlight is a little brighter on us during a semifinal game. So we try to better prepare ourselves for the extra excitement that comes with that game, the extra preparation. We certainly know that the schools are going to come in with a little bit more of a purpose, a little bit more of a business approach to the week. A lot of times we make our events that we plan all year long voluntary, optional, because we do know that some coaches approach the activities during a semifinal differently, and we don't want to force anything down to make a team do something that they don't want to do or would feel would take away their preparation for getting into the championship game. It's basically a Cotton Bowl on steroids, but we certainly are very much aware, and we certainly take that into consideration, as we do our planning.
Well, Rick, thanks so much for being on the show. You're truly a legend in the bowl business, whether you or not you want to admit that or accept that, you are. So thank you for all you do for college football. Thanks for all you do to support bowl season. We really appreciate that, and for having you on the show.
Nick, thank you. Thanks for having me. It was really an honor.
And thanks to all of you for listening to this week's Bowl Season Stories podcast. Please join us again this weekend for a special edition of Bowl Season Stories, where we will be taking our podcast on the road to Indianapolis at the College Football Playoff National Championship. We'll be at Playoff Fan Central, visiting with former Miami Hurricane and Indianapolis Colt Reggie Wayne, as well as former Michigan Wolverine and New York Giant Amani Toomer. If you like the show, we'd appreciate you dropping a 5-star rating for the podcast. And as always, you can follow all the podcast and bowl season news on our website, bowlseason.com, and on social media at Bowl Season. Thanks for listening.